South East Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
While Leader funding has contributed significantly to community-based initiatives and businesses throughout County Wexford over the past decade, Wexford Local Development has just announced that €2.5 million in Leader funding will be made available to niche Wexford businesses in the food, tourism and circular economy industries. Here to tell us more about the funding is Tom Bermingham, who is the Leader Programme Coordinator with Wexford Local Development. Tom, before we discuss the latest funding announcement, remind us about some of the projects that were funded under previous Leader programmes.
Morning, Carl, and thanks for having me along again. During the last Leader programme, which ran from mid-2016 until early 2023, we had a total of 279 projects funded in County Wexford. There was total grant aid of €10.6 million. Subsequently, 97% of that, or €10.3 million, was actually drawn down by those applicants. You hear a lot of times about grant aids that's approved. You rarely hear about how much is drawn down. So I'm delighted to say that we have a very high success rate in drawdown. So during that time, 116 businesses in County Wexford received total grants of €5.7 million. That's an average grant of around 50,000. And in addition to that, 163 community group received in the region of 4.5 million. And the average grant there would be about 28,000. So this grant aid sustained 950 jobs in the county, Carol, and also led to the creation of about 150 new jobs. So Leaders plays a huge role in County Wexford. Some of the projects that listeners will be familiar with, just briefly mention Stafford Spirits in Enniscorthy. They'll be well known for their Jackford gin and indeed their Bold 98 whisky now. So we Leader funded a gin distillery there. Trudy's Kitchen in New Ross will be very well known for providing a lot of food supplies. Funded a lot of expansion equipment and that for Trudy. Also Bean and Goose, the well-known chocolatiers in Gorey, very, very successful, and Leader is proud to have played a role in funding them for a range of equipment. Lots of others. We funded 2 honey producers in the county in the last year or so. Killane Castle Honey, which would be a new entry to the honey producers, and also Tara Hill Honey up in Gorey, who would be long established in the honey game. Interestingly, from a tourism perspective, we'd have funded Lantern Events, who would be well known. Brian Byrne here in town for the Spiegel tent and lots of other shows. We would have funded Brian for a range of lighting and sound equipment, and I think it was a good investment on Leader's part. Other smaller tourism attractions like Pirates Cove and Coretown and Leisure Max here in Wexford would have also got some Leader funding.
And today you're here to talk to us about the new Leader funding programme, which runs up to 2027, Tom. So how does this latest grant aid differ from the previous Leader programmes?
Well, I suppose I don't want to be negative here, Carol, but it is important to point out that our grant aid this time is 5.4 million, which is substantially down. It will mean that over the 4 years we'll have about 1.3 million to give out each year. That would compare to around 1.6 million per year in the last programme. So it does mean that it's going to be a competitive process, and will be very targeted where the grant aid will go. Other than that, there are 3 themes, or I prefer to call them different pots of money. And the main one that will apply to your listeners in the business world would be what's called enterprise development and job creation. So we have about €2.5 million for that, and that'll cover private enterprise and indeed social enterprises as well.
So looking at each of these sectors in turn, what areas will Leader be prioritising in terms of the circular economy?
We're looking at projects that will have a positive impact on climate change and indeed on protecting the environment as well. This is a big focus on all EU funding now. It was there during the last programme as well, but in a much lesser way. So we're looking to hear from people who are involved in the circular economy in the reduce, reuse and recycle type of space. It's very hard to be specific on what we'll fund, but we want to hear from people who are looking to fill a gap in the market, people who've identified a gap in the market in County Wexford. We'd be delighted to hear from you and to see, is it something that Leader could support.
Tom, tourism is a significant industry across County Wexford and makes a valuable contribution to the local economy. So what type of niche projects is Wexford Local Development hoping to see coming through in applications?
Yes, indeed, Carol. Tourism does play a major role in County Wexford and is always a strong focus for Leader as well. we will have in the region of €1 million for specifically for tourism projects, and within that we're looking at activity tourism, who indeed need all the support that they can get during these challenging times, but particularly in terms of accommodation we're looking at kind of niche accommodation in the eco space, things like glamping pods and that, anything that's currently, I suppose, doesn't have a major supply of in the county at the moment. We are actively speaking with a number of promoters who are getting into that space, and I would like to think that during the lifetime of this programme there will be more niche glamping pods, high quality glamping pod establishments around the county.
And of course, social enterprises are a key target for Wexford Local Development under this current Leader programme. But what are the specific areas that the activities of these enterprises should be focused on?
Social enterprises, again, I'd like to think in terms of community tourism. There's initiatives in tourism around the country where some social enterprises are getting very involved in, and you don't have to travel too far from Wexford to find good examples of those, and we're actively encouraging social enterprises in the county to look into that area as well, and particularly from a community tourism point of view.
And how will the funding allocation of €2.5 million be split?
So in terms of tourism, Carol, it'll be in the region of €1 million. The social enterprise side of it will be closer to €500,000. And then we'll have circular economy, which will be in the region of €500,000 as well. We will be doing it on what's called a rolling call basis. So we'll be dealing with applications as they come to the table, so to speak. Whereas in terms of community projects, we tend to do it on what we call a targeted call basis.
And what level of grant aid would be available for these niche projects?
There's up to 60% grant aid, Carol, with various maximum amounts for eligible costs, and the eligible costs can be things like equipment, it could be the fit out of a building, it could be marketing costs and so on. For activity tourism, for instance, and indeed for food and circular economy, the maximum grant is €150,000. But for tourism accommodation types, because we feel that that there's going to be an oversupply, if you like, we're capping the grant at €100,000 maximum. I should also mention, in terms of feasibility studies, they play an important role in the establishment of a lot of tourism businesses around the county, and they're eligible for grant aid of up to 75% with a cap of €30,000.
Tom, what is involved in the application process?
So it was the first thing to say, Leader grant aid doesn't apply retrospectively. So it's important that people talk to us at the very beginning of developing a project or at looking at diversifying their business or whatever. Pick up the phone to us, drop us an email. We'll be very quick to tell people whether they're eligible in the first place. We never lead people up the garden path, so to speak, putting them through a process of application and tendering and all of that, unless we feel there's a better than reasonable chance of them being successful in securing grant aid.
And what is the relevant timeline involved in an application process from start to finish?
The first thing to say, Carol, is Leader is not a quick fix. If somebody comes to us and they want to get something and they need it in a month's time or 2 months' time, there's not a chance that it will have got through the process. The application process, in general, we find it can take people minimum 2 months, because tendering, and there's a whole process that I won't go into this morning, but tendering on its own can take a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks. Putting a business plan together doesn't happen overnight as well, so you're often looking at a minimum of 2 months from the initial inquiry. Then when we get the complete application, there's a lot of compliance checks. As I said, there's evaluation meetings, there's WLD board meetings. All of those have to happen before a contract is issued, if you like, if somebody has been successful. So that can take another 2 months. So I would say at a minimum 4 to 5 months, Carol. So I always tell people when they make the initial call, I tell them, look, you need to position yourself 6 months from now, and then you need to look at, well, what does your business need in the following 12 months? If you understand me, that's the best way of looking at it. Because when somebody is successful in securing funding, they get a contract, and in general, they have a year to do what they said they were going to do.
And you mentioned, Tom, that the evaluation committee will have a particular evaluation matrix that they will be working from. What will that include?
Well, one of the big things with Leader is what's called displacement, Carol. So you're not going to get grant aid to develop a business that's merely replicating somebody else that's already in that space in the county or indeed the neighbouring counties. That's the first thing. The second thing, really, I suppose there's about 10 different criteria. Job creation would obviously be a big part of it, and job sustainability. So we look at that. The impact on climate change is a big part of it now. About 20% of the scoring is based on how a project will impact on climate change and the environment. The viability of the business overall is another criteria that's looked at. So there's a whole range of things, and we go through that with every applicant very early in the process so that they know what they're getting involved in.
What do they need to do as a next step now, Tom, if you have piqued their interest this morning in applying for Leader funding?
I suppose log on to the website wld.ie/leader. So they'll find most of the information there, but there's still lots of information that we don't put up on the website that's best to be given to somebody face to face or over the phone. But I can assure you that we will deal with every inquiry, and if it's an inquiry that we feel has merit for grant aid, we'll guide them the full step of the process.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.